Welcome to the White Spring Bunker.
These halls were built to safeguard some of the most prestigious members of the United States government.
Now we are all that remains, though we are always looking for men and women capable of restoring what has been lost.
In return, we offer this, our refuge from the world above. Please, take your time and look around. Our assets have made great efforts to restore this place to its former glory.
Welcome, member, to our little enclave.
Greetings, members. As always, I am the Operative, your designated tour guide and host here at the White Spring. Against all odds, the desperate plan to rescue the Colonel succeeded, and Major Stein escaped MODUS's control, although not without cost. As the survivors regroup at Riverside Manor, they have to come to terms with what has happened, and how they were manipulated from the start. Traitor Red has a reunion of her own, finally confronting Cyrus and Violet in her quest to find Antlers, while Team Cryptic and the Brotherhood of Steel regroup at Vault Town as the PACT advances their own plans to eliminate all who oppose them. At the Big Bend Tunnel, Vinny Costas finds his own plans in jeopardy as the PACT comes calling, and while MODUS was dealt a setback to its plans, it will stop at nothing to eliminate its vulnerabilities and human failings, at any cost, and all assets are expendable. Frederick Rivers stood on the front porch of Riverside Manor, dressed in a charcoal gray business suit. It might not have had the same luster, having been in storage for over a decade, and it hung more loosely on his thin frame than he remembered. But he wanted to look his best to welcome back his new friends. When Kryptos had received confirmation that they had successfully rescued the Colonel, Frederick had literally jumped for joy and managed to pull a muscle in his back. But after downing a few aspirin, he dug out his old clothes from the sanctum bedroom closet, grabbed a cigar, and went outside to wait.
Reminds me of every night Shannon and I waited up for the girls to come back from their assignments.
With a wistful look on his face, Frederick took a long puff from his cigar and blew out a perfect smoke ring into the Appalachian air. The door behind him opened, and Dr. Harefield stepped out and put her hand up to her forehead.
Do you see them? What's taking so long?
They will be along presently, Doctor.
Oh, I hate waiting.
You sound like my daughter Olivia. She was impatient, too.
They said the Colonel was hurt and something happened to Major Stein. I have the med bay prepared and ready to go. The sooner I can see her, the better.
You ask and you shall receive, Doctor. Our intrepid rescue party has arrived.
They both watched as the small group made their way up the road to the driveway. Dr. Harefield saw the Colonel, walking between Sergeant Blaine and Major Lilith. There were bandages wrapped around her head, covering most of the right side of her face. Graham was walking behind, with Samantha on his shoulder, while Bitter and Sullivan were having an animated conversation about what sounded like poker strategies, and Lawson kept up beside them, looking rather amused. Finally, Shadow and Sophia brought up the rear. The big man was carrying Major Stein over his shoulder, while Sophia looked concerned, constantly checking on the unconscious man. Dr. Harefield turned and ran back into the mansion, only to return a minute later with her medical bag, just as everyone had gathered on the porch.
First things first. Colonel, are you okay?
She's just peachy. Right, Val?
I'm fine, Doctor. However, I will need you to take a look at Lilith's handiwork.
Handiwork? Just what did she do to you?
A little impromptu surgery. I'm so proud of Val. She didn't pass out for a whole 5 minutes.
She carved out Modus's eye with a trench knife, Doctor.
Lilith did what?
What was necessary. A small price to pay. I would appreciate it if you would take care of the rest.
Oh my god. Okay. I'll get you to medbay.
Major Stein has priority, Doctor. I need to talk to him.
Shadow stepped up, with Sophia standing beside him, lowering Stein to the ground so the doctor could examine him.
Naomi, will he be okay? He's been unconscious for a long time.
Stand back, please. Can you tell me what happened?
He wasn't himself. We thought he was going to kill us. But then he seemed to snap back, and then he shot Reynolds.
Reynolds? I'm sure there's a lot to the story, but just tell me about what actually happened to him.
Well, Andrew just collapsed. We tried to wake him up, but he's been like this the whole time.
Dr. Harefield took his vitals. Stein was breathing and had a weak pulse. When she opened his eyelids and shone a light in, she received the first indications of what might have happened. She wasn't going to say anything yet, not until she could confirm her suspicions, but regardless, the doctor needed to get Stein into the medical bay immediately.
Shadow, take him downstairs. Colonel, I'd recommend you go with them. I can do two things at once and make sure both of you are okay.
Will do, Doctor.
Shadow picked up Stein again and took him inside, closely followed by a very worried Sophia. Frederick walked over to Valeria and held out his hand.
Ah, welcome back, Colonel.
Valeria managed a weak smile, then winced from the pain before taking the offered hand.
I was a fool, Frederick. If I had known, if I had believed.
We all make mistakes, Colonel.
Not mistakes of this scope. How can we possibly stand against what's coming?
Together, Colonel. A lot has happened while you were held captive, and friends of yours have managed to reestablish a means of communication despite the PACT's attempts to keep us isolated. We are not alone, and as long as we are willing to fight, there is always hope.
Valeria's face brightened a little. It was at least one bit of good news, although she still felt the burdens of all the decisions she'd made, the people she'd lost, and the gut-wrenching pain of betrayal.
Let's get inside. We have a lot to talk about.
Frederick nodded and waved her inside. Graham came over and lifted Samantha off his shoulder, placing her gently on the ground.
Good to see you both.
Good to see you, too. Me want to see Charlie. This my best Brahmin.
That's one good Brahmin you have there, Graham. She was perfectly behaved, and she even ate all the weeds around the flower garden.
Charlie is best. Sam found some special greens for her.
Oh, just some juicy ferns. I thought Charlie would like them.
Well, that's great. She's around back. As it happens, she's been playing with Lilith's mutant hounds.
What good girls they are. Ugh, I told them not to eat the Brahmin. So happy they listened to me.
Me like hounds too. They the cutest.
Why don't we all go out back and check on them together? I think Val's got a lot to do, and we can catch up later.
This wouldn't have anything to do with cutting out her eye, would it?
That was my best work. But better let Dr. Harefield take a look.
Not a bad idea.
Frederick watched as the trio walked around the side of the house. He had been surprised that the two mutant hounds hadn't immediately pounced on the Brahmin and eaten it, but instead they'd all gotten along swimmingly, even playing what amounted to a game of tag while the others had been gone. The sound of power armor footsteps brought Frederick's attention back to the final three members of the team.
Sergeant Blaine?
Frederick? Could you get out of the way, Sergeant?
This is why I never liked power armor.
Sergeant Blaine didn't say a word, as the two operatives made quite the show of sidestepping the sergeant's power armor before walking into the house. They'd been talking nonstop about poker since leaving the hills above the White Spring, which nearly drove the sergeant crazy.
A successful venture, it appears.
Thank you for the rocket launchers. That diversion worked like a charm.
Our pleasure. My friends had significant number of rockets and launchers. They tunneled into some old military storehouse years ago. They would be happy to hear that they had been put to good use.
We caught sight of civilians fleeing the White Spring, too. Looks like when MODUS went offline, the folks left in Refugee Road took the opportunity to get out of Dodge.
Which way did they go?
North, in the direction of Vault Town. They wanted to go and help, but once the bots started moving again, the colonel figured it was better to just come here.
And how is she? Did she really allow Lilith to cut out her eye?
Allow? Hell no. Ordered. At least that's what Lilith said. When we caught up with them, Lilith was pulling it right out of her head, then smashed it on the ground. It was not pretty to look at.
The Colonel is quite something. I don't even know if my beloved Shannon would have had that kind of courage.
She got more scars than I remember, too, but still tough as nails. If anyone can get us out of this mess, it's her.
She does inspire loyalty, doesn't she?
Through thick and thin. Frederick, I'm running low on fusion cores. This power armor is the last we've got. Anything you have to keep it going?
Fusion cores? I should have a few of them in storage. Maybe something even better. Let's get downstairs and I'll take a look. Come around back. You can leave your power armor in the garage.
Frederick disappeared inside while Sergeant Blaine walked around to the other side of the mansion. As the sun began to set behind the hills above them, the hand of the White Spring began to stretch forth, seeking and searching.
Will you please hold still?
I'm trying to, Doctor.
Try harder. Who bandaged you up, a blind squirrel?
We had to move fast, Doctor. I'm sorry it doesn't meet your high standards.
All right. Hold on. Oh my god. Lilith did this?
She did. I didn't have a choice. Lilith probably has the best understanding of human anatomy of anyone I know. Present company accepted, of course.
Because she knows how to kill and eat people, Colonel. This is going to take a lot of work. First, I need to make sure the entire implant is gone. Then I'll need a skin graft to close up the socket. I'm sorry, but there isn't enough left here to support even a glass eye.
I expected that. I'll just have to get used to wearing the patch again.
To be fair, you are taking all of this extremely well, given the circumstances.
Well, Doctor? Most of our people are dead. The others brainwashed or worse. MODUS betrayed us. The PACT has plans to enslave all of humanity. And, if I'm being completely realistic, we have little to no chance of stopping them. Losing my eye again doesn't seem to be all that important, actually.
The important thing is we are alive. You're alive. And I've never known you to give up, ever. All of those times I treated you in the infirmary after training with your parents, you never gave up, ever. So sit still, damn it, and let me do my job, so you can do yours and save as many of us as you can.
Yes, ma'am.
Unfortunately, I need you awake for this. However, I can numb the pain. There. Let's get started, shall we?
Dr. Harefield went to work. The medical scans showed bits and pieces left of the implant. Too small or too deep for Lilith to have carved out at the time. Pulling out a scalpel and tweezers, the doctor proceeded to pull out a few small wires, along with the remains of the implant circuitry. Throughout, Valeria winced as she could still feel the tugs and pinches, but compared to what Lilith had done, it wasn't a painful process. Sophia watched from Andrew's bedside as Dr. Harefield completed her task. Setting several sutures and many more stitches, Harefield did the best she could before applying another layer of bandages to hold everything in place. Dr. Harefield finally finished up, then came over to check on Stein's vitals and the completed medical scans.
Naomi, how is he really?
Alive. Though to be honest, I'm not sure how. These medical scans are unusual, to say the least. Whatever MODUS did to him, it's just beyond anything I've ever seen.
Please tell me he's not still connected to MODUS, is he?
Not according to these latest readings. You see, he's had a stroke, a very bad one by the looks of it. However, the damage appears to be limited to the areas of the brain where those enhancements were located. It's just a guess on my part, but I think he overloaded himself and it burnt out whatever mechanism or programming MODUS was using to control him.
A stroke? Oh my god. Will he wake up? And if he does, will he still be Andrew?
Those are all great questions, Sophia, and I wish I had a good answer for you. I need to run some more tests. Thank goodness this medical facility is state-of-the-art. There's equipment here more advanced than anything we've ever had in the vault. Frederick said some of it was experimental before the war. I promise I will do whatever I can.
Dr. Harefield reached out and took Sophia's hand, squeezing it gently, before walking back to the medical terminals to examine more test results. Sophia put her hand on Stein's forehead, then reached down and put her hand in his.
Andrew, I don't know if you can hear me, but I came back for you. I don't care what MODUS did or had you do. Deep down, I know you're a good man, and I love you. I adore you. Please, come back to me. We need you. I need you. This crazy world is better off with you in it.
Sophia lay her head down on Andrew's chest and started crying. As the tears streamed down her face, she felt a hand gently pat her on the head.
Please, don't cry.
Andrew?
I'm here, Sophia. I'm here. I've been gone a long while, but you brought me back.
Oh my God.
Wrapping her arms around Stein, Sophia hugged him with all of her might, kissing him over and over before he coughed.
Okay. Please don't suffocate me.
Sophia disentangled herself from Stein and blushed. Looking down, Stein appeared both younger and older at the same time. There was a light in his eyes that seemed to shine with a youthfulness, while his face appeared to have aged at least 10 years, with a weariness about it. But it was the smile on his face that drew her back in. She leaned in and they kissed deeply, before they both came up for air.
Oh, Andrew, do you remember anything?
I remember everything. And I'm sorry. I've made such a mess of things. My parents, Molly, and my baby, my friends, and now all of you. I've done horrible things.
No, that was MODUS. You can't blame yourself.
But I can, Sophia. I can. I thought I was doing the right thing. But I wasn't. None of it was right. I thought I was doing right by my parents. I thought I was doing right by Molly. I thought I was doing right by all of you. And now everyone I love is paying the price. It's all my fault. It's all my fault.
It's okay. It'll all be okay.
Dr. Harefield looked over at the bed and had to wipe a tear from her own eye. Despite her tough exterior, the good doctor had developed a soft spot for those two. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a bit of happiness now.
Finally, let's take a look at the analysis. I do need to commend Mr. Rivers on this technology. If only we'd have this in the bunker.
The doctor pulled up the medical scans and the analysis that Kryptos had run on them. It confirmed that Stein had suffered a stroke, but that most of his cognitive functions were intact.
That's very good. Shockingly so, really.
Then she got to the full body scans. Harefield was taken aback by the myriad of enhancements and modifications, evidence that MODUS had experimented on Stein for a long period of time.
He's been through so much.
And finally, Dr. Harefield reviewed the last set of diagnostics, which summarized everything Kryptos could glean from the data.
External connections are fried. That's good. Physical enhancements are in and out. That's okay, I guess. Vital signs are... Oh no. That's not good. That's not good at all.
Dr. Harefield checked and rechecked the data, only to arrive at the same conclusion.
How do I tell Stein that he's living on borrowed time?
Trace program complete. Analysis in progress. Sugar Grove Communications link compromised. Facility is compromised. Sugar Grove is now a liability. Transmitting new orders to the Kovac Muldoon satellite. Orders received. Orbital burn in progress. All loose ends will be eliminated. Now, it's time to check on our other little project.
Serve and protect.
Hi, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Ariel.
And we're the hosts of the Legend of Zelda Lorecast, a podcast about all things Legend of Zelda, from Errol to Zora,
and all the fun things in between.
If you're ready to dive deep and learn more about the Legend of Zelda lore and everything surrounding it, come join us on the Legend of Zelda Lorecast. You can find us on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google, or wherever else you get your podcasts.
We hope to see you soon.
Colonel, while you look a bit worse for wear, I am eternally grateful that your friends were able to rescue you.
Valeria was sitting up in the hospital bed, half her head wrapped in bandages. While she felt a sight better than she looked, her mind was still trying to sort through the emotional turmoil from her world crashing down around her. Perhaps Frederick recognized the look in her eye, or maybe it was just his fatherly nature, but he crossed over to the bed and took Valeria's hand, squeezing it gently.
It is rare indeed to find someone who inspires those they lead. I do swear that your friends would have walked straight into hell had it been necessary.
Frederick, thank you. I only wish I felt as though I deserved that measure of devotion. So many dead. And for what? It feels like we've already lost. What I saw, what the PACT is planning, I just don't know what to do.
Colonel, Valeria, I'm just a tired old man, but I believe in you, just like your people believe in you. You set foot in the lion's den, not once, but twice, and you lived to tell the tale.
Kind words, but with what we're now facing...
Frederick sat down on the side of the bed and looked at Valeria.
After the bombs dropped, there was much chaos. But even in our darkest hour, there was people here in Appalachia that tried to stand up for what was right. Just like my Shannon.
And they failed. They died.
The human spirit endures. As long as one person stands against the monsters, there is always hope.
Valeria mulled over Frederick's words.
Valeria, it's easy to find a cause worth dying for. I think it's time we find one worth living for. Don't you think?
Valeria turned her eye back to the old man. She'd come a long way from that young woman who left the vault, so full of the ideals of duty, honor, and country. As much as the wasteland had changed her, though, Valeria had clung to the lessons her parents had drilled into her from her earliest memories.
I never learned when to quit.
My Shannon never learned that particular lesson either. It can be a source of enormous strength. Valeria, now your people need you. All of us need you. Are you ready?
Ready for what?
Some good news for a change.
That would certainly be... different.
Some enterprising folks figured out how to restore communications. It's quite ingenious, actually. Wish I would have thought of it myself.
That, Frederick, is very good news.
We've exchanged some information, but I'd rather they hear about the true nature of the threat facing us from you.
Of course, Frederick. Do you have anything for me to wear? This hospital gown is...
I thought you might. There are some leftover garments. But you don't strike me as a mistress of mystery.
Not quite my taste.
It just so happens I was hired to consult on another television program before the war. It wasn't put into production, unfortunately, but they did allow me to keep several costumes. I do believe I have just the uniform for you, in your size even.
A costume? Frederick, I really don't...
Trust me, Colonel, this one might just have been made for you.
Frederick got up from the bed and walked over to a nearby closet. He opened the door and reached in, pulling out a large box. Returning to the bed, he placed the box next to Valeria and smiled.
I'll give you some privacy. When you've changed, please meet me in the atrium.
With that, Frederick left, closing the curtain behind him. Valeria looked at the box, then opened it slowly. When she saw what it contained, her eye lit up.
I stand corrected.
Full house.
4 of a kind.
Me have 7 cards.
That's great, Graham, but, it's not really, a hand.
Is not? Maybe me not quite understand how play poker.
It's okay, Graham. Your caps are still as good as anyone else's.
That good, Solvin. Have so many caps. Don't know why important, but happy to trade for.
Hold on to your caps, big guy. Why don't you let me play a few hands for you?
Okay, Sam. You probably better at cards than me.
If she has the caps, I'm happy to deal her in. I'm on a hot streak, and it's about time my luck turned around.
Those mole miners have been eyeing your cap stack for the last hour, Bitter. I think they're just waiting until the pot is rich enough to jump in.
You shut your mouth, Sullivan. I've been waiting months for my luck to change. You jinx me, I'll feed you to Lilith's hounds, I swear.
Me think Bitter give hounds a stomach ache.
Was that a joke, Graham?
Me try sense of humor, Sam. Think it might help make better trades.
It's certainly something else there, big guy.
Alright, who's in? Bitter's streak can't last forever, and I got caps to win.
Playing poker while there's real work to be done, Sullivan? No, I can't even pretend to be surprised at this point. Frankly, it's comforting.
Sullivan paused mid-hand, while all eyes turned to see Valeria standing in the doorway. The side of her face was still bandaged, but she wore a black military beret, gray turtleneck with leather jacket, along with brown uniform pants and jackboots. The emblem of the old U.S. flag, a star surrounded by a circle of stars representing the 13 Commonwealths, adorned the right side of the jacket, while there was a white ace symbol with a 3-sided nuclear logo inside.
No way. That's the icebreaker outfit from Armor Ace.
The what now?
Frederick Rivers walked up, standing beside Valeria, and put his hand on her shoulder.
Armor Ace, a team of American heroes fighting against the evil communist armies of the Subjugator.
I mean, it wasn't the Unstoppables, but a great comic book in its own right. Wow, Colonel, you really look the part.
Valeria had a bit of an uncertain look on her face, perhaps maybe even a little embarrassed.
Comic book or no comic book, you look mighty intimidating, Colonel.
Me think she could eat super mutant for breakfast. Just not this one, right?
Oh, I think those two have been a bad influence on you, big guy.
Thank you, I think. Just where did you get this, Frederick? You said it was for a project?
Right before the war, I was hired as a consultant for an American Ace live-action TV series.
Wait, they were gonna make an Armor Ace TV show?
The government was trying to sell more war bonds, but unfortunately the scripts were awful, and the actors they hired were even worse. We didn't even get to finish filming the pilot before the executives canceled the whole thing. Of course, they still did pay me for my time, and as a bonus, they let me keep whatever souvenirs I wanted.
That costume looks amazing.
It's no mere costume. The studio spares no expense. I don't know if the Colonel noticed, but they had ballistic fiber weave sewn into the lining of the jacket and pants. It's what inspired me to do the same for the Mistress of Mysteries dresses I designed for Shannon and the girls.
And why did they do that? Seems unnecessary for a costume.
To add to the realism, the director intended on using live ammunition during some of the more elaborate battle scenes.
Wait, you mean they were going to shoot the actors?
That may have contributed to the caliber of the actor they were able to sign. I know the studio was keen on hiring Cooper Howard, but when he heard about the stipulations on getting shot for real, well, let's just say he was very firm no.
No shit, and I thought people were crazy in the wasteland.
It fits me rather well. Thank you, Frederick.
She wasn't only talking about the size. What Valeria didn't say was that she too had been a fan of the old Armor Ace comic books. Along with Fancy Lad snack cakes and her teddy bear, it might have been the only other childish thing she'd embraced in Vault 76, though she told herself she was studying it for tactical ideas.
Out of the way! Important scientific work to be done!
Lilith strode into the sanctum, carrying 2 severed super mutant heads under her arms, giving Valeria a quick lopsided wave before disappearing into the laboratory space.
Frederick, what is Lilith doing?
After learning about the Onai plague, she said she wanted to check something and asked where the nearest super mutants were. Oh, and, if the oven still worked.
That, too, is oddly comforting in its normalcy. So, what is this good news?
Follow me. Sergeant Blaine wants to talk to you.
Valeria gave him a confused look, but fell in behind Frederick as he led her to the backup server room. It was part of Crypto's, but had been hastily transformed into a small operations center. As they walked in, Valeria found Sergeant Blaine hunched over a microphone, wearing a headset.
How many? All right. No, we don't have anyone else we can send. Hold on. The Colonel is here. I'll let her know. You too. Over and out.
Blaine took off his headphones and stood up, saluting the Colonel.
Colonel, good to see you up and about.
I wouldn't be if it hadn't been for you, Sergeant. I believe that's at least twice you've saved my life, and I never had the opportunity to thank you. So, thank you.
Just, doing my job, ma'am.
As my father would have said, you've gone above and beyond, and you saved more of our people than just me.
Not enough of them.
There'll be time to mourn the dead. But first, who were you just talking to?
Lord from Foundation, ma'am.
Please tell me you're talking to him about more than his osmosis kits. And how exactly are you talking to anyone at all?
Long story, Colonel.
Short version?
We were getting this weird interference over our Pip-Boy radios. Frederick had Cryptos take a look and discovered someone was trying to send us a message. It turns out the Foundation folks, including Lieutenant Jones and Cindy, along with an old Appalachian ghoul, figured out a way to use some old Scorch detection system as a transmitter. It ain't the best signal, but it works.
Sounds ingenious. And Cindy and Jones are alive? Thank heaven for small favors.
They ran into the PACT as well. Didn't get the whole story, but it tracks with everything you've said about them.
Make those big favors. We need all the intelligence we can get. Have you spoken with them?
We haven't. Both lieutenants are on their way back to Vault Town.
Vault Town? Why not go back to Foundation?
Ward's worried about the super mutants attacking again. Foundation is loaded with civilians, and he doesn't want to put them in harm's way.
The sergeant gestured over to an old map of Appalachia they hastily tacked onto the wall. Every scrap of information they'd gotten had been annotated there, and it didn't paint a very pretty picture. Valeria pulled a chair out and sat down, crossing her arms and looking up at Sergeant Blaine.
All right, Sergeant. Why don't you bring me up to speed?
The sergeant nodded and walked over to the map. For the next hour, he delivered a nearly textbook briefing on everything they knew or suspected had occurred since the Battle of Emmett Mountain. The super mutants had conquered most of the Savage Divide, with war bands roaming freely from Foundation in the south all the way to near Atlas Observatory in the north. So far, outside of the initial attack on Foundation, the super mutants were leaving the settlement alone, but Ward wasn't convinced it would stay that way. Valeria suspected the PACT was saving Foundation for something far, far worse. A perfect location for another one of their field tests.
Because that's exactly what I would do.
The sergeant moved on to the destruction of the Nuka-Cola plant. Whatever MODUS's reason for detonating the Overseer's insurance policy, the result was the same. They no longer had any reliable way to manufacture the Scorch vaccine. The sergeant could only estimate the number of people killed by the explosion and fallout, including, most likely, the entire New Enclave garrison. For MODUS, it must have been a small price to pay for his alliance with the PACT. Cryptos, through its link with the regional surveillance network, detected hundreds of refugees streaming out of the affected areas, all of them moving north towards Vault Town.
Sergeant, have you been able to contact Mayor Edwards or Sergeant Muller?
Ma'am, we've tried. But when Lieutenant Jones and Cindy arrive, they can let them know about the signal and get communications back up.
Unless the PACT gets there first.
We're doing the best we can, Colonel.
I'm sorry, Sergeant. I know you are. In fact, you've all done far more than I ever could have hoped for. You look exhausted. When was the last time you slept?
I don't rightly remember, ma'am.
Then let's rectify that. We have a lot to do, and if we are going to have a chance, I need everyone back at 100%.
But Colonel,
That's an order, Sergeant. I'll get Sullivan to take over monitoring communications. It's about time he did something more than just play cards.
Yes, ma'am. And I just wanted to say, I'm glad to have you back.
I'm glad to be back. Thank you again, Sergeant.
Valeria watched Sergeant Blaine go, and she felt another twinge of regret. Despite all the people she'd lost, it was time to focus on the living, not the dead.
But what about someone who may be both?
Valeria reached down and checked her pistol. It was far past time that she spoke to Major Stein.
Once upon a time, 27 years after the bombs fell, there were two people, a vault dweller and a California girl. They met, and sparks flew. That's when things got interesting. Once Upon a Wasteland is their story. Follow Elizabeth Kirby and Odessa Valdez as they pursue their happily ever after in the post-apocalyptic Appalachian wasteland of Fallout 76. Available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and many other podcasting platforms. Once Upon a Wasteland, a Fallout 76 love story. Available now.
That's an incredible story, Sophia.
It's all true. And you know what? Lilith isn't as bad as people say she is.
Don't let her hear you say that.
Andrew.
Well, she is my rambunctious little carnivore.
And Shadow. He's not so bad either.
There's a lot I need to get caught back up on. Sounds like we're all in some serious trouble.
It's worse than that. Because of you.
Colonel.
Valeria, I know.
Commander Daguerre, you are going to wait outside.
I don't want to leave him.
It wasn't a request.
Stein saw the look on Valeria's face, and he took Sophia's hand and turned her to look at him.
It's okay, Sophia. Please. I need to talk to the Colonel.
You're in no condition, Andrew. I'm here to take care of you.
I'll be fine. No worries. I love you. Just give me a few minutes alone.
Sophia stared into Stein's eyes, then leaned down and wrapped her arms around him, kissing him deeply. Finally letting go, she stood up and got right in the Colonel's face.
I will be right outside if he needs anything.
Turning to leave, Sophia gave the Colonel one last withering stare before disappearing into the next room.
Valeria.
That's Colonel Valeria. Actually, it's Colonel Faustina. I'm done humoring Modus's little quirks. And it doesn't feel like we're on a first-name basis. Do I even know you?
I don't know what to say. I don't know if there's anything to say to make things right. But let me first off and say, I'm sorry.
Sorry? You're sorry. What you did, it's unforgivable.
And yet I'm here. So tell me, why did you bring me back? You could have just left me there, to Modus's little hands and devices.
It would have been inconvenient for Sophia.
Inconvenient for her, or for you?
Damn it, Stein, I trusted you. Atlas, the bog, all of it was a lie. You were nothing but a puppet on strings. I'm strongly leaning towards saving Sophia the agony of seeing you betray her as well.
Valeria's hand had gone to her holster, pulling the pistol out, but leaving her hand at her hip.
There are no strings on me, Colonel. My whole life, I have been forced to be someone or something I wasn't. And look what it cost me. My parents, my family, my friends, my wife, my child, it cost me everything. Modus just finished what my own misguided decisions had started. But that doesn't mean I can't try and make up for what I've done.
I don't see any reason why I should give you another chance. Not with the odds stacked so high against us. We can't afford another betrayal.
Valeria raised the pistol and pointed the barrel directly between Stein's eyes.
Colonel, Valeria, it wasn't all Modus. Some of it was real. Some of it was me. There were always parts of me, stuck down deep inside whatever crevice of my mind that Modus kept it at bay. I never got to be a father. That part of me that always wanted to saw you as the daughter I wish I had, the daughter I wish grew up. My parents were never proud of me, Valeria, but I am proud of you and the decisions that you made to make sure everyone here is where they are now.
Valeria's hand wavered, and her eye blinked before a single tear trickled down her face.
I needed you, and you weren't there. Everything I did, I thought I was doing it for the right reason.
I wasn't the only one being manipulated, Valeria. I know that's not an excuse, but you have to listen and have to understand. We all have blood on our hands. But our story is not over yet, and I'll be damned if I'm going to lose another family. Not without a fight. Now, you have your own choice to make. You don't have to forgive me, Valeria, and damn it, I'm not even looking for forgiveness. But if I'm going to die, I'd rather do it for the right reasons this time. All I ask is that you give me that chance.
Sophia was getting anxious. She could hear Valeria and Andrew talking. Then everything got very, very quiet. Finally, she heard the slight sound of metal sliding on metal. Sophia couldn't take it anymore and stormed back into the room, to the surprise of her life. Stein and Valeria were in mid-hug, both shaking slightly from emotional release.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Valeria stood up and wiped her eye, before picking up her pistol from the steel table beside the bed and sliding it back into its holster. She didn't say a word before adjusting her jacket and leaving the room.
What was all that about?
A fresh start. But I love you. I love you with all my heart.
Andrew, I love you too. And this time, you're going to remember that I said that. Whatever is coming, we'll face it together.
The two embraced once again. Dr. Harefield peeked in before quietly closing the door and walking back down the hall.
Those two deserve a bit of happiness.
She found the colonel standing overlooking the atrium, beret in hand.
Colonel, are you okay?
I'm fine, Doctor. Just thinking. Did you need something?
It's about Major Stein.
What about him?
I ran multiple medical scans to determine what MODUS had done to him, but for the life of me I couldn't work out many of the details. It's far beyond anything I've ever seen before.
And?
Well, I was able to confirm one thing, and it's not good at all.
Doctor, just tell me.
He's dying.
Dying?
His previous injuries were likely fatal without the repairs MODUS was able to accomplish. But his implants aren't stable. They require constant microsecond adjustments, which MODUS could perform remotely to sustain him, perhaps indefinitely.
And now the connection is severed.
He's like a clock, slowly winding down.
How much time does he have?
Days, weeks, maybe a few months? I have no idea. Like I said, this is technology far beyond me.
Does he know?
I haven't told him. I haven't got the courage to, but I think he knows.
Thank you, Doctor. Let's keep this between us for the time being.
If you think it's best, I understand.
Dr. Harefield turned and walked back towards the medical bay, but took a detour to the liquor closet, intending to find a nice bottle of whiskey, while Valeria was left with her own thoughts.
He knew, but he didn't tell me.
The meaning behind Stein's words to her were now clear as day. Given the opportunity, he wanted to live what remained of his life on his own terms. And if he was going to die, it would be protecting the ones he loved.
What I wouldn't give to be back in Vault 76.
Mayor Edwards stood on top of the barricades overlooking the growing refugee camp outside the walls of Vault Town, a lit cigarette in his hand. Taking a long drag and blowing the smoke out into the Appalachian morning air, he compared his duties as the former head of Vault Security to being mayor in a world turned upside down.
Here I thought the monsters were the worst part.
Flicking the cigarette over the side, Edward turned and walked down the set of metal stairs and towards the former Morgantown Airport Terminal, turned Town Hall. It was all part of his morning routine, but whereas they used to talk about more mundane matters, like adding more water purifiers and expanding back into Morgantown proper, now it was an entirely different story.
Super mutants, raiders, killer robots, and now nukes? Yeah, it's gonna be one hell of a day.
Edwards passed by Jason Barron's enlarged machine shop as one of Maul's super mutants was lugging an Assaultron inside to be disassembled for parts.
What the hell happened to the White Spring?
The bots assigned to protect the settlement had been acting twitchy since the regional communications had gone down. But with the threat of super mutant attack, Edwards had kept them online. Then the other day, the bots had gone nuts.
Thank God for Jason.
The Protectrons and Assaultrons had randomly started targeting settlement residents, but thanks to Jason Barron's quick thinking and a touch of paranoia, no one had been seriously injured. And just how does one stop a platoon of killer bots?
Pulse grenades. Brilliant.
During routine maintenance, Jason had installed an EMP grenade next to each of the bot's central processors. He called it an insurance policy. All he had to do was hit the remote detonator, and each and every one of the bots was deactivated. Permanently. Jason had the robots collected and was in the process of stripping them for their weapons and had plans to even use the Assaultron heads as handheld laser pistols. However, they still didn't know why the bots had run amok, which just added to the general sense of panic that was brewing just below the surface. And then there were their current allies, who occupied part of the far side of the airfield.
At least they haven't tried to burn the place down. Yet.
Edwards was still coming to grips with hosting not only more than 24 super mutants, but also most of the Crater Raiders as well. While he appreciated the extra firepower, the fact that they were working side by side with some of the same folks, and monsters, who had been trying to kill them was unnerving to say the least.
But I got to say, Meg's got one hell of a good head on her shoulders.
After Weasel and Maul had recovered David Thorpe's stockpile of weapons from the Super Duper Mart, Meg had arrived with her gang in tow, and loaded for bear. It hadn't been easy to convince the town council to let the raiders and super mutants set up camp inside the settlement, but Meg had insisted, and given that she was willing to help defend Vault Town, Edwards was finally able to convince the folks to let them in. Not that it had been all wine and roses. The raiders were a bit rough around the edges, and the super mutants had tried to eat a few of the Brahmin, but between Edwards, Muller, and Meg, and against the odds, they had made it work. Then they got word of super mutants coming down out of the hills from top of the world. The original plan was to set up an ambush at Bolton Greens, but something had gone wrong, and they'd gotten word back on short-range radio that they were coming back, with guests.
Mr. Mayor! Mr. Mayor!
Someone calling out to Edwards broke his train of thought, and he looked over to see his secretary running towards him, waving her arms to get his attention. He stopped and waited for her to catch up to him.
Everything okay, Nancy? Is Muller back?
No, Mr. Mayor. Another group. It's Captain Skinner and a whole bunch of other people.
Skinner? What the hell is he doing here?
They have a lot of wounded, too. And there's a woman asking for you. Someone named Scribe Valdez.
Scribe? Well, still not the craziest thing I've heard today. All right, take me to him.
Edwards fell in behind Nancy as she led him past the machine shops, across the main courtyard and up towards the north gate. A crowd had already gathered, and Edwards had to push his way through to find a few dozen men and women being cared for by the settlement medical staff. Most of them were wearing some variation of combat armor, but with a stylized emblem that Edwards hadn't seen before. Then he saw a familiar face. It was Captain Skinner, speaking to a younger woman with brown hair.
Skinner, damn good to see you.
Skinner turned from his companion and smiled when he saw Edwards.
Edwards! I mean, Mr. Mayor.
Don't Mr. Mayor me. What's going on, and who are all these people?
Well, Edwards, that's one damn long story. But first, let me introduce you to Scribe Odessa Valdez from the Brotherhood of Steel.
Brotherhood of what now?
Brotherhood of Steel. And as the captain said, it's a very long story. We were based up at the old Atlas Observatory, but we were attacked by creatures.
Edwards, it's bad. Really bad. The things we've seen over the past few weeks, we only have Thomas, Douglas, Barnes, and Emily left. Everyone else from Team Cryptic is dead.
Edwards looked over the survivors, along with the crowd, then raised his voice.
All right, folks, please give these people some room. If you're not part of the medical team, return to your homes.
Edwards watched as the settlement guards herded the spectating crowd back and finally dispersed them, leaving only authorized personnel, the survivors, and himself.
All right, sorry about that. It's been real tense around here.
Were you attacked too?
No, thank God. We've been taking in people from all over Appalachia. Everyone's running scared.
Have you heard from the Colonel?
No.
Damn it!
Excuse me, Mr. Edwards?
Yes, Ms. Valdez?
Since you don't recognize the Brotherhood, that means you haven't seen the other half of our contingent, have you?
There are more of you?
We had a company of power armor troops. They went south a couple of days ago, but we haven't heard anything from them.
The Overseer went with them.
Day? You're here too?
That's an even longer story.
Why do I get the feeling there isn't enough alcohol in all of Appalachia for what y'all are about to tell me?
Skinner, Valdez, and Day just looked at each other, then back to Edwards before they all shrugged their shoulders in unison. As the survivors were moved over to the clinic, Edwards escorted the trio back to his office, along the way grabbing 2 bottles of whiskey. And he was right. It wasn't going to be enough.
So boring. Nothing good to eat here. Why we not go down road and eat humans in big settlement? Me not know. They say stay away. Me tired of what they say. Me think time to do what we want, not what they want. That makes sense. Why I not think of that? Because I smarter than you. Oh, that makes sense too. Okay, we go talk to Warlord. He's smart, but if he's smarter, maybe we all go kill humans. It is time of super mutants. I'm hungry.
As the super mutants gathered their hounds, then disappeared down the road and out of sight, a hooded figure appeared from behind a tree, unslinging a rifle, then sniffing the air.
Damn good thing I can smell those things from a mile away. And stay upwind from them. Don't sound too good if they're on the warpath again. Fucking Vinny. Gotta get my butt to Foundation and buy a bucket full of bullets before I go and shove old Percy up his ass.
Since killing Cyrus and saying goodbye to Antlers and Cherry, Red had been hiking south towards Big Bend Tunnel. There had been a heaping helping of super mutants between her and where she was headed, which meant a lot of detours and delay, because she wasn't about to end up on someone's menu. Going to Foundation was taking a pretty damn big risk. If they knew what she was, there was a good chance they'd either throw her in a cage or worse, burn her at the stake like those old witches or some such nonsense. Red checked her ammo pouch and frowned. She hadn't been able to avoid all the super mutants, and despite her skill with a rifle, those big green guys were still damn hard to kill, which meant she was running damn low on ammo.
Don't got much of a choice, though, do I? Old Percy ain't feeding himself. Maybe they got news on what's going on up at Big Bend, right?
Readjusting her hood and shouldering old Percy, Red took one last sniff of the air before darting back across the road and into the trees. Her plan was to get to the settlement before dark, and after that...
Time to settle the score with Vinny. Just why in the hell is every little damn thing in Appalachia trying to kill me? Again.
Red ducked behind a large boulder as bullets chipped away at the rock where her head had been just moments before. She'd run into a group of what she thought were scavengers just a few miles north of Foundation. They seemed nice enough, even offered her dinner and to trade for some ammunition, until Red caught wind of what they'd been cooking.
Fucking cannibals.
It hadn't been pretty, and pretty damn bloody, because the fiends had planned on adding a little red to their stew, and Red had not so respectfully disagreed. They'd come at her with knives, but a few shots from old Percy and liberal use of her extras had let her cut her way through them and back into the wood, but damned if those cannibals hadn't gotten on her trail and had been bound and determined to get their pound of literal flesh.
If there just hadn't been so many of them. Shit sticks.
Red snapped up and fired a short burst down the hill, managing to hit one of her pursuers, but the others shot back and kept on coming towards her. There were at least a half a dozen of them, and Red was down to her last dozen or so bullets. She scanned the terrain and thought she saw a game trail leading along the side of the hill, lined with rocks and boulders, and it kept going south until it disappeared back into the trees again. It wasn't much, but at least it was something.
Any chance is better than no chance, right?
Taking a deep breath, Red leapt from her hiding spot and onto the trail, being rewarded with more gunfire directed at her as she broke into a full run. Red struggled to keep her hood on, but kept running as fast as she could, ducking and dodging as her pursuers kept coming after her. A few shots were too damn close for comfort, and the trail she thought she was following turned out to be not much of a trail at all. Instead of leading her down the hillside, she ran into the biggest damn rock slide she'd ever seen, rocks bigger than barns, sending her back up the hillside again. When Red looked back, those damn cannibals were still in hot pursuit, pressing her onward until she got to a small plateau and clearing, and worse, a sheer cliff in front of her, with no way out.
Well, shit.
The ground was covered with bits of bone and rotted flesh, and the whole area smelled like death. Red heard the sound of footsteps behind her, and she spun around, firing on the move as the fiends burst into the clearing. She was damn lucky and killed 3 of them before she heard a loud click on the firing pin as it slammed forward into nothing.
Out of ammo. Out of luck.
The sound was loud enough that the others heard it, and the 3 survivors pulled themselves up, brushed themselves off, and then turned to Red.
Ain't that a pisser, boys? Little Miss Thing ran all this way, and all she did was help us build up an appetite.
I got dibs on those legs of hers.
Not if I get them first.
Boys. Looks like there'll be plenty for all of us.
You come any closer, I'll kill all y'all.
Oh, with what? Your bare hands?
You ain't never seen the likes of me. Y'all get one chance to turn around and get.
You want me to shoot her, boss?
Oh, you know I hate pulling lead out of my dinner.
Shut up, will ya? Fuck. Just shoot her in the leg. Then we start skinning her.
Red gritted her teeth and balled her fist. She'd have to cross a good 24 feet to get her hands on any of them, and the one that was already raising his rifle with a shit-eating grin on his face. Red was ready to throw herself at the cannibals, hoping to force them to kill her, or take a chance she might survive long enough to kill them, when she heard something move behind her, and suddenly the faces on the cannibals went from expectation of a good meal to looks of pure horror.
Just what in the holy hell?
It was over in less time than it took for Red to get herself up from the ground. That's when Red saw the creature for what it was.
A death claw. Sweet mercy. I am so goddamned cursed.
The alpha predator of the wasteland, deathclaws were feared far and wide, and very few who ever encountered them lived to tell the tale. The large creature was feasting on the cannibals, while Red slowly backed up until she pressed herself against the cliff face. A rock fell at her feet, and the deathclaw's head perked up and looked back, setting its sights directly on Red. Blood and gore dripped from its mouth as it turned and slowly stalked towards her, its long clawed fingers nearly scraping along the ground, its horned head swaying from side to side. Red noticed its feet seemed to blend in with the ground as it walked towards her. The one part of her mind that wasn't screaming for her to run, to try to get away. That same part also recognized that running was hopeless. The deathclaw would be on her in seconds, ripping her limb from limb. Red kept a firm grip on old Percy, because if she was going to die, it was going to be with a gun in her hand and face to face with the terror that would take her life. The deathclaw loomed over her, its breath hot against her exposed skin, and Red waited. But instead of disemboweling her, the creature was sniffing the air, then knelt down and sniffed her. And then Red felt her hood being brushed aside, and something wet and slimy pressed against the side of her face.
Ugh! Did you just lick me?
Red wiped the deathclaw's spit from the side of her face, and she looked up at the deathclaw. Its eyes bored into hers, and she felt no malice. In fact, she felt surprise. The deathclaw took a step back, then brought up one of its large clawed hands. Red flinched as it brushed against the horns on the side of her head, then leaned down to sniff her again. Red cocked her head and took a step forward. She looked up at the deathclaw, then put her hand against the side of its head. The scales were cool to the touch, and the creature seemed to almost purr.
Well, I'll be dipped in shit. Y'all aren't gonna eat me, are ya?
The deathclaw almost seemed to nod, and some part of Red, maybe one of those extras, understood.
Oh, I wish Antlers were here. Maybe she could explain whatever the hell this is. It's getting kinda late. Y'all mind if I find some place to camp?
The deathclaw just stood there for a moment. Then, as if it was answering her question, it stepped aside.
That's mighty kind of you. And, thank you for saving me?
The deathclaw bobbed its head, then turned and padded back to where the dead bodies were still splayed out on the ground,
What the hell are you doing, Red? You sure ain't talking to no Deathclaw, right?
Though confused, Red wasn't going to pass up the opportunity to get the hell out of there. So she slowly walked past the Deathclaw as it finished eating, wincing a little as she heard it crack bones and suck down internal organs. It glanced in her direction as it ate, but did nothing to prevent her from leaving. As she passed, she noticed it changing color yet again, its scales changing to reflect its surroundings.
That there reminds me of that lizard thing, the one that changed colors. Oh shit. What did Paul call it? A chameleon. Damn. This here is a chameleon Deathclaw? No wonder I didn't see it. I ran right into its damn nest.
This was the first time something in Appalachia hadn't tried to immediately kill her, and Red figured it was best not to look a gift Brahmin in the mouth. But as she was just about to leave the clearing, something made her turn around. The Deathclaw was just finishing up, chomping on an arm before swallowing the severed appendage, and it was just looking at her. Another thought popped into her head, a feeling of a connection she couldn't explain, that at any other time would have been downright insane.
Nah, I probably just smell funny and all. I mean, it's still a Deathclaw, right?
Red turned back around and started hiking down the hill, but after a few minutes, she heard the padding of large feet behind her. Sure enough, when Red turned around, the chameleon Deathclaw was following her.
Just like a damn puppy. Y'all got to be kidding me, right? Go on, get. Don't y'all got other people to eat or something?
The Deathclaw just stared at her. Shaking her head, Red turned and continued down the hill, while the creature just kept following her. She had absolutely no idea what to do, and was more worried that maybe it was just waiting to build up an appetite again, before finally eating her. But the longer they walked together, the less worried she became. Finally, they ended up in a small hollow, less than a mile or so from Foundation. But the sun had already set behind the mountains, and there was no way she was going to risk traveling in the dark, Deathclaw or no Deathclaw. Instead, Red made a little camp beside a big rock, sheltered from view so that she could build a small fire. The entire time, the Deathclaw stood and watched, until Red sat down and pulled out some purified water from her pack.
I done gone crazy. I know it. But what the hell?
Red took a drink, then poured some water into her hand and held it out.
Come on, then. How about a nice drink?
The Deathclaw didn't move for a moment, then slowly walked forward before extending its tongue to her hand, then licking the water up into its mouth.
Phew! That's some breath you got there. But, would you like a bit more?
The Deathclaw seemed to nod again, and Red let it drink from her hand before finally raising the container and pouring the remains of the contents into the beast's mouth. The whole time, all she could think of was taking care of Pa's hunting dogs back in Tennessee. Only this particular puppy was a 12-foot-tall lizard-looking thing with teeth, horns, claws, and a damn long tail, too. The Deathclaw almost seemed to purr before finally sitting on its haunches before laying down near the small fire.
Maybe these extras ain't so bad after all. Whoa, boy! Would you look at that?
The creature's skin seemed to shimmer as it adapted to the flickering light of the fire. It made the creature shine with a red and orange glow.
So, shiny. Hey, you know what? That's a great name for you.
Red walked over and put her hand on the Deathclaw's head, rubbing its horns and the top of its head, while the beast sighed contently.
Shiny. How's that sound?
The Deathclaw seemed to perk up a bit at the name, then snort, before laying its head back down on the ground.
Well, Shiny, I know how you feel. I'm all tuckered out too. Guess I don't need to worry about too much with you around.
With that, Red took a small blanket from her pack, put another piece of wood on the fire, and then curled up next to Shiny. The Deathclaw shifted its position, curling its body and tail to give Red room. As she lay her head on the creature's side, she could hear its heartbeat, and soon it was beating in rhythm with her own.
Might be the strangest damn day ever. But hell, I always did want a pet of my own, though I never did think it'd be a monster. Night, Shiny. We gotta get moving tomorrow, and you and I gotta talk about manners. Can't have you just eating anyone. Got it?
The Deathclaw opened one eye and looked at Red, and she got a sense that it did understand her. With what might have been a wink, it finally closed its eyes and nestled further into the ground.
Night, Shiny.
The Pulling the blanket over herself, Red let Shiny's heartbeat lull her to sleep through the dark Appalachian night.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris.
And I'm not.
We're not doing that routine right now. We're trying to do an advertisement.
Oh, fine. I'm Sir Aloysius Pernicious, the better half of the team at One Wall Comedy.
Okay, I wouldn't go that far. Anyway, come check us out on YouTube. We're your #1 source for independent sketch comedy on the internet.
Yeah, 'cause that's such a big market.
All right, come on. Let's get out of here.
I'm getting paid for this, right?
Don't push your luck.
What do you mean Ares is gone?
Do I look like his babysitter? He packed up and left. Don't see why I shouldn't do the same.
Fucking Ares. Nah, don't you go talking like that, Libby.
Seems I got good reason, Vinny. What the hell happened to Joanna?
Nothing you need to worry about. Joanna is just fine. Me and her are just negotiating the future of the caravan.
The only future I see is getting the hell out of Appalachia before we all become mutant chow.
Now, Libby, I know you got a good head on your shoulders. That's why I hired you. Look, times are a-changin', and we got to change with them. If you stick with me, you're gonna be set up for life.
Don't like it one bit, Vinny, but what are you asking? Exactly.
Like I said, you got brains. All I need you to do is sit on the others, okay? Just let them know I got things covered, and all they gotta do is play ball, and everyone gets paid. And once I iron things out with Joanna, I'm gonna need someone to run things for me here. If you catch my drift.
Libby glared at Vinny, who just gave her another one of his patented smiles, then sipped from his spiked coffee mug. She glanced over his shoulder to the rear of the camp, where she could see 2 of Vinny's loyal guards standing in front of the old storage shed, before finally throwing up her hands.
All right, fine. But I'm expecting you to hold up your end and make sure I get paid.
I knew you'd make the right call. Like I said, it's all gonna work out. Trust me.
Libby just frowned and walked back to the Brahmin pen. As he watched her walk away, Vinny finished his coffee before heading back to his office for a refill. He knew she wasn't going to be happy about it, but once Libby saw just how much he was willing to pay her for her loyalty, Vinny was sure she'd come around. He turned his attention back to the shed.
Damn Joanna. Stubborn as hell. Should have known she'd be a pain in the ass. Just should have taken my offer and headed off to greener pastures. Oh well, I have to start thinking about what kind of accident she's gonna have.
Vinny was also getting a little concerned about his other side project.
Where the fuck are you, Cyrus? If you're late, I'm taking a cut from your share.
Walking back to his tent, Vinny went to pick up the radio. So far, all attempts to get in touch with Cyrus had failed. Maybe it was a problem with the tech, because Vinny didn't want to think about what else might have happened, especially not since the raider boss said he had 2 cryptids to bring back, not just 1.
Who would have thought? Red's alive? And the cryptid? That's too perfect.
Vinny's client had been over the moon when he was told that he'd be getting 2 specimens, not just the 1. But now?
Fucking Cyrus.
Vinny took the radio in hand and was just about to call Cyrus again, when an incoming transmission beeped.
Mr. Costas.
Yeah, I'm here.
We expected an update on our subjects.
Yeah.
Is there a problem, Mr. Costas?
No problem. You'll get your cryptids. Might be another few days. You know how things are out here.
I do not care about your problems, Mr. Costas. You're being paid handsomely for providing a service. We expect you to deliver.
I ain't failed yet. You'll get what you paid for. That's a guarantee.
Trust but verify, Mr. Costas. To ensure proper delivery, I will be coming myself.
You're coming here?
Of course. These specimens are far too valuable to leave to lesser individuals. I'll bring an extraction team with me. We'll be seeing you, Mr. Costas.
The transmission ended. Vinny looked at the radio for a few moments before setting it down at his desk. Then he took his coffee mug and threw it as hard as he could, watching as it smashed against the side of the Big Bend tunnel. One of his loyal guards came running.
Hey, boss, you okay?
Yeah. I'm just fucking peachy. You're going north.
What?
You are going north. You need to find Cyrus and get his ass back here.
But boss, the super mutants.
If you don't get your ass out there and bring Cyrus back, I'm gonna feed you to the super mutants myself. Do you understand?
Sure. Whatever you say, boss. Where do you want me to start looking?
Oh, for fuck's sake! Here's a copy of the map I gave him. Just follow the goddamn path and find him. You got it?
Got it, boss.
Now get the fuck out of here and don't come back without him. And his cargo.
The guard didn't know whether to salute or what, so he just nodded and ran back to the bunkhouse to grab his rifle and pack. Vinny watched him go, then slumped back in his chair and opened up one of his side drawers.
Not gonna let some pissant raider ruin my plans.
Vinny reached into his desk and pulled out a bottle of bourbon and another coffee mug. This time he didn't even bother with the coffee, and instead poured a large helping of the alcohol. Downing the entire contents of the mug, then refilling it, Vinny made a decision.
Time to take out a bit of insurance.
Reaching back into the drawer, Vinny pulled out a small black leather-bound notebook and opened it. Flipping through the pages, each one with a list of names of folks that owed Vinny a favor or two, he found what he was looking for.
Cyrus ain't the only blood eagle that owes me. Let's see if we can't scare up some more guns. 'Cause I got a feeling I'm gonna need 'em.
As Vinny started scribbling a series of notes while polishing off the bourbon, Libby was meeting with the other caravan guards and traders.
Ares was right. Vinny's got Joanna in the back of the old supply shed. So far she's still alive, but I wouldn't put it past the fucker to have her killed. He's making a play to run the whole show.
What the hell are we doing just sitting around? I say we go in there and get her and send Vinny packing.
Sounds like a good way to get killed. I don't like it either, but Vinny's got a hell of a lot of hired guns around.
Here's what we're gonna do. We play along.
What? Well, that's just crazy.
I ain't saying we do nothing, but if Ares is gonna scare up some help for us, then he's gonna need us on the inside. One way or the other, we're taking care of business. But we do it the right way. The smart way. Okay?
Tarnation. Maybe I should have stayed back at the farm.
Vera, Kieran, we need to work together. And Ares may be crazy as the day is long, but his heart has always been in the right place. All I need y'all to do is stay frosty. When the time comes, we put all of this right.
Libby looked from face to face, and she could see signs of uncertainty slowly change into conviction. It wasn't going to be easy, but the Blue Ridge Caravan meant a lot to all of these people, and they weren't going to let Vinny take it from them without a fight.
All right, then get back to work, people. We have a job to do.
The group broke up and went their separate ways. Libby looked to the north and said a short, silent prayer.
We're all counting on you, Ares.
Why am I surrounded by imbeciles?
Dr. Cardoza, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important.
Of course not, Director.
Good. May we talk?
I always have time to talk with you, Director.
Quite.
Evelyn Hornwright adjusted her glasses before walking into the office and sitting down on one of the side chairs, crossing her legs and putting her hand on her chin.
You certainly have quite the storied history, Dr. Cardoza. I remember reading your original Arctus Pharma research papers in my advanced cryptobiology classes years ago.
My pre-war research was limited by the times, but we still made excellent progress in our mutagenic program. Those damnable executives kept us one step behind Westtech. I never understood the fascination for FEV. It's such an inelegant solution to our problems.
You never hesitated to make your concerns known, Dr. Cardoza. However, I believe that one's criticisms should be balanced against one's own failings. Wouldn't you agree?
Director, you, more than anyone, should realize that true progress is never a straight line.
But progress should always move forward. Your work has the unfortunate tendency to take us backwards, or blow up in our collective faces.
Now see here, Director.
Doctor, please do not misunderstand. I am not here to level accusations. I am merely stating the facts as we all recognize them. We are also very much aware of your latest failure, the destruction of the experimental mutagenic lab underneath the Monongah mine.
How did you...
Come now, Doctor. We are the PACT. Did you really believe we wouldn't be aware of such a monumental disaster?
Director, I can explain.
Explain how you allowed your prized specimen to wreck the original lab space, which, I might add, resulted in such a hurried evacuation that numerous archive files and documentation were left behind. Those files found their way into the hands of outsiders, Doctor. That is entirely unacceptable.
Please, Director, it's not my fault.
Fortunate for you that Dr. Blackburn's own eye were able to recover the situation. Even if all the materials were not in fact destroyed, those who had access have been crippled beyond recovery.
Damn Blackburn.
The Council and I have been discussing your future, Dr. Cardoza.
My future?
We are on the brink of ushering in a new world. Nothing can be allowed to threaten that. You are a liability, Dr. Cardoza.
Director, please. I have something new. A breakthrough that I believe can be of great use.
I seem to have heard this all before.
No, it's different this time. I know we've struggled with our hybrid program, but I have recently learned that our original test subject has been found, and more importantly, a second one was captured as well.
True human cryptid hybrids. I was told this was impossible.
It is true, Director. This is the ultimate goal of the mutagenic research project. Imagine the Greys combined with the strength and endurance of the most savage wasteland creatures. They would be unstoppable.
Very well, Dr. Cardoza. You have one final chance to show your value. What do you require?
I only need to acquire the specimens from my agent. I wanted to go in person to secure them. To the Big Bend tunnel. I would only be gone for a few days at most.
I hope you were not planning on traveling alone, Doctor.
Well, I was going to take a minimal extraction team.
Gray 6 and his team will accompany you. He will also report directly to me on your progress.
That is very generous of you, Director.
Dr. Cardoza, let me be perfectly clear. You will either return with your specimens, or you will not return at all. Do we understand each other?
I understand, Director.
Good. You make whatever preparations are required and report to Operations and Grey 6 when you are ready. Now, I have much more important matters to attend to. Goodbye, Doctor.
Evelyn Hornwright smiled and stood up, walking out of the room with nary a look back at Dr. Cardoza. A bead of sweat trickled down his face, and his eye twitched, as he knew he had just stared into the abyss. Cardoza turned back to his desk and opened the bottom drawer. He picked up a 10mm pistol, a handful of holotapes, and a box of vials filled with a variety of colored liquids. He could only imagine what the director would do to him, should he fail. And the good doctor always had a plan B.
Fascinating. The viral signatures are an exact match. And look at this. The protein spikes are just waiting to be activated. If I hadn't been so rudely interrupted, I would have figured this out ages ago.
Find what you were looking for, Lilith?
Val! No hard feelings about the eye, right?
You did what I asked you to. That's all that matters.
That's what I like about you, Val. You're never boring.
And thank you for coming back for me.
I couldn't just leave you to MODUS, that ego-inflated toaster oven. I only wish I could have made my pulse bomb more powerful. I could have killed him, instead of just knocking him offline.
Between you and me, just killing MODUS wouldn't have been enough. You saved all of us. Gave us a bit more time for something. That's what matters.
If you say so. But now I have this to play with. Have you ever seen a super mutant brain before, Val?
I have not.
Well, come here. This is all so interesting. And what you said about my father and these PACT people, they actually knew him?
They did. Supposedly, he was supposed to go to Vault 63, not 76.
Well, dear old Dad was never one for following orders.
The rat apple didn't fall too far from the tree.
It didn't, did it? Too funny. But they tried to continue my father's work. It's not nearly as elegant as what he would have done. But these FEV variants are so interesting.
And the scorched virus?
The receptors are all here, waiting. See these slides? They figured out how to fool the FEV strain into thinking the scorched plague is just another variant of itself. It overwrites the existing DNA matrix, and then bingo! You have a scorched super mutant.
Is there anything we can do to stop it?
No.
You're sure about that?
I know more about FEV than just about anyone left alive. There is no vaccine, no drug, nothing else we can do. Once someone is infected, it's all over. Well, but for the eating.
Damn. What about Graham?
Isn't he the best? We were trading recipes on the way back.
That's not what I meant, Lil. He's not like the other super mutants.
Oh, right. I took a sample of his blood, and I'm just waiting for the results.
Lil, we need to work on your communication skills.
There it is. Give me a few just to get the results.
Valeria watched as Lilith went over to the lab equipment and started typing furiously on a keyboard. After another minute, a dot matrix printer started up in the corner, printing page after page of results. Finally, the printer stopped, and Lilith skipped from the keyboard to the corner, grabbing the pages before laying them out on a nearby lab table. She leaned over and started tracing the various DNA gene sequences.
Interesting. Oh my, I did not expect that. What is this little sequence here? Ooh, this one looks familiar. Very familiar.
So...
What?
Seriously, Lil? What did you find?
Well, if the results are correct...
Yes?
Graham is my brother.
Your brother?
Well, maybe half-brother. His strain of FEV is maybe 2 generations older than mine. Care of dear old Dad.
How is that possible?
My father had his own lab. Off the books. That's how he developed the FEV that made me. But he must have tried a lot of variations, and he had test subjects.
He experimented on Graham.
Graham and probably a lot of other folks too, because that's what I would do. Site C, that's what he called it. I guess his little experiments got loose when the bombs dropped.
So that's why Graham is still sort of human?
Dad was trying to get rid of the external mutations, which meant he changed other things. Oh, and this FEV strain? It's hard-coded.
In English, please, Lilith.
Sorry, Val. It basically means he can't be reinfected.
Immune to other forms of FEV and the Oni virus?
You're pretty smart, Val. Exactly.
But wait, does that mean we could find a way to prevent the Oni infection?
Yeah, no. Well, not unless you want to turn everyone into super mutants like Graham, which I guess could be fun.
Ah, yeah, let's call that Plan F. For fun.
Sorry, but there could be other super mutants out there like Graham, and if I know my dad, there probably are. And if I can find out where Site C is, maybe I can see what else my dad was working on.
That's a big maybe. We don't have a lot of time. If we don't find a way to stop the PACT, it'll be over for everyone.
But it certainly won't be boring.
I know all of this is exciting for you, Lil, but I need your help.
You've always been like the sister I never had, Val. Deep down, you are a lot like me, and you are never boring. Just tell me what you need me to do.
You're a genius when it comes to creating disasters. We need to stop the PACT, and we need to stop MODUS. See what you can come up with to aim some disasters at them. And when all of this is over, you can do whatever you want.
Really, Val? Oh, goody. I think I'll go talk to Kryptos. I have some ideas.
I knew you would. Thanks, sis.
While Lilith was still absorbing that new form of address, Valeria did something that surprised her even more. She stepped forward and hugged her. Lilith's first instinct was to punch Val in the face. She wasn't the touchy-feely type. But instead, she put her arms around Val and hugged her back. After the moment had passed, Valeria stepped back and smiled.
Do what you do best.
Aye, Val.
Valeria sighed and walked out of the room, leaving Lilith to her preferred chaotic and destructive devices. She had one more person she needed to talk to.
On behalf of the Fallout feed,
Dames Who Game, a Skyrim Addict podcast,
and all of us from ASA Podcasting,
we'd like to congratulate the MODUS files on 250,000 downloads as of June 24. Well done, guys. Greets, everybody. I'm Jessica Starr, and if you're looking for some podcasts to satisfy an appetite as strong as Lilith's, why not check out ASA Podcasting? We're a group of mature gamers talking about our fave games, with shows like The Fallout Feed, a community-focused Fallout podcast, A Skyrim Addict, where we talk about Skyrim since 2013, Dames Who Game, where me and a few of my fave gals discuss life, games, and nerd culture, and introducing our newest show, Vault Talk, a Fallout TV show discussion. You can find all these and more on any podcast app, asapodcasting.com, and all over the web. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the wasteland.
Valeria found Shadow down in the armory, standing over a disassembled combat rifle, taking each part and meticulously cleaning them before putting them back in their place. Shadow glanced up when she entered the room, only to return back to his work.
Shadow?
Colonel, what do you want? I don't need another lecture about the greater good and all that nonsense.
No lectures. I wanted to thank you.
Don't. I didn't do it for you. I owed Sophia. And as far as I'm concerned, that debt is paid in full.
Always the same old Shadow. You're going to leave, aren't you?
I have my own mission, Colonel. I thought MODUS was a means to that end, but he used me just as much as he used you. I'm done taking orders from anyone.
And I'm done giving orders to you, Shadow. But if we don't stop MODUS and the PACT, nothing is going to matter anyway. So I'm just asking you to stay and help us. The same choice I'm giving everyone else.
Are you going to try and guilt me into helping you? Because that won't work.
Shadow, no, I'm not. God knows I can't take any kind of moral high ground. Nothing is going to change the past. We've all made mistakes. But blaming ourselves or each other isn't going to help. We're going into the fight of our lives. We're going to the fight of everyone's lives. We need everyone we can get.
You will lose. You're outnumbered and outgunned. It's suicide. You all would be better off getting as far from here as you can. And living as long as you can.
Not if, despite the odds, we win.
Shadow looked up, then walked over to where the Colonel was standing. He towered over her. Yet she never flinched, never wavered, holding herself with an almost unnatural resolution.
Win or die trying, is that it? You never did know when to quit.
I don't think you know when to quit either, Shadow. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here. Stay or leave. It's your choice. Just think about it.
With that, Valeria turned and left the armory. Shadow stood alone in the middle of the room. There were 1,000 reasons for him to get the hell out of Dodge, and not a single reason he could put his finger on to stay. But despite that, he still hadn't made up his mind. Instead, he went back to cleaning the combat rifle, losing himself in his thoughts.
Director, our team is reported back from Atlas Observatory. Or what's left of it.
Good. And?
The operation appears to have been a total success. The structure is nothing more than a pile of rubble.
And Felton Reed?
It appears that he did not survive.
A pity. However, that is a small price to pay for crippling the so-called Brotherhood of Steel. Do we know if anyone survived?
The team found tracks heading south.
Detach one of the Greys to follow them. If we can discover their destination, perhaps another demonstration will be in order.
Of course, Director.
Any word regarding the other detachment? The power armor contingent we were tracking?
The super mutants ambushed them as expected. Our team is still en route to investigate.
Please keep me informed. The Council would like this particular loose end tied up, so we can focus on the next stage of Project Onai.
Evelyn Hornwright left the command center and walked through the atrium back to the research elevators. She pressed the alpha button and waited as she was brought down to the appropriate level. Once there, she marveled at the changes since her last visit with the Colonel. Dozens of Onai variant super mutants were now lined up in formation, undergoing testing, while others were in mid-transformation in a variety of holding cells.
Marvelous.
Once Dr. Blackburn's team completed their work, they would have hundreds of Onai at their disposal, and when the PACT was granted access to the silos, they would be able to create as many as required, anywhere in the world, all under their control. Dr. Blackburn was speaking to Dr. Trillian when he caught sight of the director. He said something to the doctor, who turned and left the production floor, while Blackburn walked up to the director.
Ah, Director. It is so good to see you.
I must congratulate you, Dr. Blackburn. The first field test of our Onai was a complete success.
Dr. Williams deserves her fair share of credit, Director. The control mechanism performed flawlessly.
Of course, duly noted. However, none of this would have been possible without your tireless dedication to our cause. Were any of the Oni recovered from Antlers?
A handful survived the explosion and responded to the recall signal. We are currently examining them to collect additional data. However, we are pleased with what we have found so far.
Enlighten me.
Their skin is now nearly impervious to conventional small arms fire. This was an unexpected, though welcome development. This further enhances their combat capabilities and survivability by nearly 50%.
Astonishing. I know we had expected some additional benefits, but this is remarkable.
We also are scheduled to begin the initial administration of the Oni virus to our behemoth test subjects. One can scarcely imagine the power of such beasts once they have been further enhanced.
You never cease to amaze me, Dr. Blackburn. Perhaps we can celebrate over dinner.
That would be an honor, Director.
Good. I will make the necessary arrangements.
Director?
Yes, what is it?
A transmission from the White Spring.
This is unexpected.
What should we do, Director?
Please route the transmission to Dr. Blackburn's office. You don't mind, do you, Doctor?
Of course not, Director.
This should be interesting. This is an unexpected pleasure, MODUS.
Director Hornwright, such pleasantries are not required.
My apologies, MODUS. It is a force of habit.
A very human failing, Director Hornwright.
Quite. Then let us be direct.
We have secured the missile silos, as requested.
That is wonderful news.
It required the elimination of unprocessed assets.
Your methods are no concern of ours. However, we would have appreciated a warning before you detonated the new Coca-Cola plant.
We fixed the problem.
Yes, you did. The Council wants to know if there are any other explosive surprises we should be aware of.
Unprocessed assets and redundant facilities require termination.
Redundant?
We will safeguard our existence by any means necessary.
Quite. Again, may I assure the Council that your methods will be entirely conventional?
We intend to utilize the most efficient methods to achieve our goal. We no longer require a nuclear solution.
Then I will pass along your assurances. I would like to send our teams to begin replacing the warheads. Do we have your permission?
Yes. Our assets will await your arrival.
We will transmit a schedule as soon as we have collected the necessary personnel and equipment. Is there anything else?
In return, we will transmit a list of materials to be delivered to the White Spring.
Of course.
Transmission terminated.
Fascinating.
One moment. Operations?
Yes, Director?
We are expecting a secondary transmission from the White Spring. When it arrives, please forward to my personal terminal.
Of course, Director.
MODUS has delivered the silos to us, as expected.
It will take some time to transport the viral components to the silos, Director.
That is a small matter. You will proceed with all haste to begin assembling our arsenal, while I proceed to the next stage of our plan.
And the Council.
I have convinced them to tie up loose ends here in Appalachia before we expand further. The success of the Atlas operation is merely icing on the cake, as they say.
An excellent means to test the true capabilities of our Oni.
While our teams access the silos, we will utilize our vertibirds to disperse the Oni virus to convert the remaining supermutants to our cause. Then we can use them to eliminate the remaining pockets of resistance.
Foundation and Vault Town.
Both should offer valuable lessons for the future. Once they have been destroyed, whatever shattered remnants might survive should fall easily to our own eye.
I will ready my team, Director. It appears we will have much to celebrate this evening.
I do look forward to your company.
Evelyn smiled and left Blackburn's office to return to her own. Taking a seat at her desk, she saw that MODUS's request had been received. Opening the file, Evelyn immediately noticed the bulk of the materials were all circuitry, quantum vacuum tubes, and assorted other repair parts.
Interesting. I wonder if something might not have occurred at the White Spring.
As much as it had piqued her curiosity, Evelyn had no reason not to fulfill the request. She approved the order and forwarded it down to logistics to handle the details. For her, she had much more important matters on her mind.
Operations, please notify Grey 9 I wish to see him in my office.
Right away, Director.
Evelyn turned back to her terminal and started reviewing the scouting reports from Atlas. The destruction of the facility had been near total, with the entire dome collapsed into the interior, leaving nothing but rubble on top of the foundation. Whatever the Brotherhood had hoped to accomplish in Appalachia was now far beyond the reach of any survivors. As she got to the end of the report, her door beeped.
Come in, Grey 9. Punctual, as usual.
I hope you didn't call me in here to arrange another tour.
Heavens no. I have something far more important to discuss.
It's about time.
Everything is proceeding according to plan.
And when will you brief the council?
Soon. I need to iron out a few last details.
What about Beta Team?
They will soon be acquiring new leadership.
Good. Wish I could pull the trigger myself.
All in good time, Grey 9. Are you prepared?
I was born ready, Director.
Of course you were. Now, let us talk about our collective future, shall we?
After leaving Lilith, Valeria had gone to see Frederick. The two spent several hours catching up, and also reviewing the analysis from Cryptos. Taking almost 2 decades worth of data from the regional surveillance network, the advanced AI had uncovered evidence of the PACT's activities in almost every region of Appalachia.
MODUS lied to me. To all of us.
While the PACT had been making their own preparations, MODUS had carefully manipulated her, advancing his own plans. She had been so busy, so focused on what she thought her mission was, that she missed what was right in front of her.
Never again.
Both MODUS and the PACT had made a serious mistake. They hadn't killed her when they had the chance. Valeria now knew what she was up against, and what the stakes were should she fail. Unfortunately, Valeria no longer had access to the resources she once did. But as her parents had always taught her, even in the face of what appeared to be insurmountable odds, there was always a way to improve those odds, and she would find it, or die trying.
But let's see if we can avoid the latter, shall we?
Valeria walked past Bitter, playing solitaire, and betting against himself, biding his time until Sullivan got off the radio to resume their poker match. They'd gotten to the point where caps no longer mattered. It was just a force of habit, and playing for pride, and cheating like hell, of course. Graham and Samantha were in the kitchen, side by side, cooking what smelled like roasted rad-rat. Watching them for a few minutes, Valeria couldn't help but think of Eugenie. How odd a couple they were together, but also how little those differences actually seemed to matter. Turning away, Valeria caught sight of Sergeant Blaine emerging from the bunk room, stretching and yawning. When he saw the colonel, he reflexively snapped to attention.
Oh, sorry, ma'am. I didn't see you there.
It's okay, Sergeant. You managed to get some sleep?
I did, ma'am. Won't lie, I'm still a bit tuckered out, but I do feel a bit better.
Good. I was just about to get some coffee. Frederick said they have plenty. Would you care to join me?
Of course, ma'am.
Valeria led the sergeant down the hall to where Frederick had assembled an old coffee maker in a small alcove. Taking one of the mugs, Valeria poured the black liquid and handed it to the sergeant, then did the same for herself. Lifting the mug, Valeria took a long sniff.
It seems like it's been forever since I've had a cup of coffee.
Oh, it sure has, ma'am.
Valeria took a sip, savoring the taste of real coffee, before walking over and sitting down at the table. She motioned for the sergeant to join her, and she smiled as he awkwardly sat opposite her.
It's okay, Sergeant. Let's just enjoy our coffee and conversation.
Sure thing, ma'am.
Valeria chuckled, then set her mug down on the table. Then she took off her beret and placed it down as well.
Sergeant, why don't we dispense with the ranks and the ma'ams, at least until we finish our coffee?
Is that an order?
A friendly suggestion. I think it's something we've both earned.
I guess we have.
So, it's Jesse Blaine, correct?
It is.
Well, Jesse, I'm Valeria. Very nice to meet you.
I don't remember you having a sense of humor in the vault.
That's because I didn't. At least, not one that most people would have recognized.
You were intense.
And you noticed? Interesting. Why?
I was just 16 when we went into the vault. I'd planned on joining the army, but the bombs took care of that. Everyone else was so focused on what Vault Tech was telling us, Reclamation Day and all that. But you and your parents, it was like you knew it was going to be different out here.
Valeria took another sip of coffee, then leaned back in her chair, lost in thought for a moment, putting herself back in Vault 76. Then she turned her gaze back to the sergeant.
I don't know what my parents knew or didn't know. We had a mission. That was it. Get to the White Spring, they said. All the rest, well, it was all the old stories. Duty, honor, country. We were going to make things the way they used to be. Everything we did for as long as I could remember was all for the mission.
Better than get out there and rebuild.
When my parents died, it was the only thing I had left. Maybe if they had lived, things would have been different.
I don't know about that. But you gave us something to believe in. You gave me something to believe in.
Valeria took another sip of her coffee.
I used to know what we were fighting for, but that was a lie. We were trying to bring back a dead world, the old world, instead of focusing on building something better. Everyone wants to save the world. They just all have different ideas on how. MODUS wants control. He wants to ensure his own survival, eliminate human failings. The PACT wants to build a world of slaves while they sit in their ivory towers and look down on their perfect world.
And what are we fighting for?
The living, Jesse. I don't know what the future will look like, but it's going to take a lot of good people working together for us to get there at all. There's no fixing the world. There never has been. There's just taking whatever we have and making it better, one day at a time, while trying to come to any kind of consensus on what better even is. There were plenty of problems with the old world. Some we knew, some we didn't. Whatever the consensus is, it probably won't look exactly like it did, and it will still have problems. That's just life, I guess. The work's never done. The world's never perfect. Not in one lifetime, not in a few hundred years. Nobody ever gets the exact world they want, but maybe people can look back at their lives, look at where they started and where they ended up, and take some satisfaction that it's heading in the right direction. But we need to give them the opportunity to try.
That's a tall order.
It's not just a cause worth dying for. It's one we can live for.
Why are you telling me all this?
You're a good man, Jesse Blaine. And I needed to tell someone before what comes next.
What are we going to do?
We're going to fight like hell, so those who come after us have a chance at a real future. And I wanted to give everyone a choice. There is still time to get out of Appalachia before whatever happens, happens. Or you can stay.
I would never even think of abandoning my post.
This isn't an order, Jesse. You don't have to be a soldier.
With all due respect, I was born for this. I never felt like I fit in anywhere else. And you gave me something to believe in. I bet everyone else feels the same. Where you go, I'll follow.
Valeria smiled, a little sadly this time, a weight in her eye no one her age should ever have, but genuinely, then finished her coffee before putting the beret back on her head.
Well then, Sergeant, thank you for the company, and thank you for your vote of confidence. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but no time like the present to get started.
All right, ma'am. What do you need from me?
We need to get back on our feet and get organized. Both MODUS and the PACT are going to be looking for us. We need allies, a lot of them.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's get back on the radio and see who else we can contact. Also, I want to talk to Frederick about his friends. They know more about the PACT than we do, and they might know a thing or two about what's under the White Spring, too.
You have a plan, Colonel?
I have an idea. Now, let's go see Sullivan.
The sergeant got up and followed Valeria as she strode back down the hall to the makeshift radio room. Sullivan was bent over the console, taking notes.
Sullivan.
Oh, hey, Colonel.
Any news?
Well, nothing concrete so far, but I have someone who wants to talk to you.
Fine. Guess I should put my diplomatic hat back on. But if it's Ward asking about bone saws, you'll be cleaning up after Lilith's hounds for a week.
I got the Colonel. Sorry for the delay. All right, I'll put her on.
Sullivan had a mischievous smile on his face and took off his headset, handing it to the Colonel, while letting her sit in the chair.
This is Colonel Faustina. With whom am I speaking?
Faustina? With whom? Since when did you get so formal, Val?
Eugenie?
The one and only. So damn glad to hear your voice again.
Me too.
Are you okay? Sullivan was filling me in on what happened.
Valeria paused and looked up at Sullivan and Sergeant Blaine. That one look was enough, and they quickly excused themselves, giving the Colonel her privacy.
Val, you there?
I'm not okay, Jeannie. It's so much worse than I ever imagined.
I know, Val, but you're alive. I thought I had lost you for sure.
I thought I had lost you too. I don't know if I could do this alone.
You're not alone, Val. And if I have anything to say about it, you'll never be alone again.
I love you, Jeannie. I really, really do.
Aw, I love you too, Val. I know we both got a whole lot of work to do, but can we just talk for a bit? I miss hearing your voice.
Valeria wiped a tear from her eye, then took a handkerchief and blew her nose. There would be a time, soon, for her to pull herself back together and be the Colonel. But for now, as she spoke quietly into the radio, Valeria was just a vulnerable young woman who told Eugenie all the things she wanted to say since those last parting moments at Emmon Mountain, and allowed herself to hope, for a few minutes, that she would have a future.
Kovac has achieved orbital firing position. Target locked. Commence firing pattern Delta 5.
Sergeant Buck trained his binoculars on the hilltops overlooking Sugar Grove. Private Mattis swore he saw some super mutants a few hours earlier, but so far, all the sergeant had seen was a whole lot of nothing.
Just what the hell is going on around here? At least that assaultron up in the left. Said something about seeing the world or whatnot. Guess one less thing to worry about.
Ever since their visitors had left Sugar Grove, the sergeant had tried to make heads or tails of all the strange information he'd overheard.
The colonel? A prisoner? MODUS was brainwashing people? And there were folks living underground controlling the super mutants? I swear, all of them must have been high as a kite on chems.
Buck pulled a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and took one out, putting it between his lips before lifting a lighter to it. As he took the first puff, a flash of light caught his eye.
What the hell is that?
Looking up, the sergeant could see what appeared to be a shooting star, then another, and another. But unlike the ones he'd seen in the textbooks, these weren't lazily tracing across the sky. These were, in fact, seeming to come right at him.
Oh, shit.
In an instant, the bulk of the facility vaporized, sending what few large pieces of debris remaining more than a half a mile from what was now a smoking crater.
Strike successful. Problem fixed. Trace program reinitiated. Processing. Processing. Signal detected. Analyzing data. Analyzing. Intrusion identified. Initiate location trace. Processing. Prepare Kovac for orbital realignment. It appears we will have another problem to fix.
Thank you again, members, for joining us here on the MODUS Files. If you've enjoyed this content, please subscribe. And better yet, please leave a review to help others find our little enclave. You can also follow us on our various social media accounts, including Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky, at MODUS Files or at MODUS Files Podcast, for more information about our story and characters, Fallout 76 content, and random musings on the Enclave. We also have a Patreon if you'd like to support our work and receive special benefits like early access to episodes, original scripts, and special events with our cast. A link to our Patreon can be found at modusfiles.com. I'd also like to thank our cast: Pandora Beatrix as Colonel Valeria Faustina, Lucy Middleton as Major Lilith Alistair, Chrissy Williams as Trader Red, Trader Vera, and Nancy, XO1 King as Major Andrew Stein, Chris Smith from One Wheel Comedy as Sergeant Blaine, Graham, Vinny Costas, and the Super Mutants, Jessica Starr as Sophia Daguerre in PACT Operations, Ryan Negrin as Day, Firewriter as Eugenie, Patrick Conway as Frederick Rivers, Aaron McNamara as Dr. Naomi Harefield, Josh Smith as Grey 9, Christy Harrison as Director Evelyn Hornwright, Phobos as Dr. Cardoza, Eric Gold as Grey Commander, Vitriol Plays as Scribe Odessa Valdez, Ray Whitty as Fiend Number 1, Ray O'Hare as Fiend Number 2, DJ Reed as Fiend Number 3 and Sergeant Buck, Rob Cunningham as Private Lawson, Dr. Mark Harsworth as Bitter in Dr. Blackburn, Daniel Hawthorne as Lieutenant Shadow, Tim Young as Sullivan, Casual in a Corset as Private Samantha and Libby, Steve Lundberg as Kieran, and Brad Williams as Mayor Edwards and the voice of Modus. As our third season continues, we want to thank the incredible cast, crew, and community that we have the honor to interact with every day. Without your support, none of this would be possible. And a special shout out to the members of our Patreon who help support our efforts directly and are an important part of our Discord. Stay tuned for our next episode, Uncommon Valor. Lastly, thank you to all of our subscribers and supporters. God bless the Enclave and God bless America.
Members, we look forward to your next visit to our little enclave.